What if the most human story ever told had no humans in it at all? Let that sink in for a second. No humans. No people crying at funerals, no parents tucking kids into bed, no love confessions in the rain. Just a machine. A box of circuits and metal alloy and blinking yellow eyes, washed up on the shore of a wild, untamed island. Alone. Cold. Completely powerless. And yet, and I mean yet in the most soul-shaking sense, within the span of roughly 101 minutes, that machine will make you cry harder than any movie you've seen in years. I'm talking ugly cry. I'm talking the kind of sobbing where you have to pause the film, look at your ceiling, and ask yourself why an animated robot is dismantling every emotional wall you've ever built. That's what the wild robot does to you. And I've been reviewing films for a long time. I've sat through the greats, the Pixar masterpieces, the Studio Ghibli legends, the DreamWorks films that surprised everyone. I've wept it up. I've felt the ache of Spirited Away. I've sat in awe of Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse. But I'll tell you something right now, with full conviction and no hesitation, the wild robot belongs in that conversation. Not near it. Not adjacent to it. In it. This is not a film you casually watch on a Tuesday night while scrolling your phone. This is a film that demands your full attention, your open heart, and, fair warning, a box of tissues somewhere within arm's reach. So before we get into the full story breakdown, before we go scene by scene through every heartbreak and every glorious moment of beauty this film delivers, I want to ask you something. Something the film itself keeps circling back to. What does it mean to be a good parent? What does it mean to belong somewhere? What does it mean to be alive, even if you were never born? Keep those questions in your mind. Because by the time we're done here, the wild robot will have answered all of them in ways that no live-action drama, no prestige TV series, no Oscar-winning screenplay has managed to articulate quite this cleanly, quite this powerfully, and quite this beautifully. Let's get into it. From the very beginning. Scene by scene. Every beat. Every tear. Every single extraordinary moment. Section 2, Movie Overview. The Wild Robot was released on September 27, 2024, distributed by Universal Pictures and produced by DreamWorks Animation. It was directed by Chris Sanders, the man behind Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, two films that permanently lodged themselves in the emotional DNA of an entire generation. So right away, before the movie even starts, you know you're in the hands of someone who understands what it means to tell a story about love and belonging through the lens of the unconventional, the misfit, the creature that doesn't quite fit where they've landed. The film is based on Peter Brown's beloved 2016 children's novel of the same name, which became an instant classic in middle-grade literature and spawned two sequels. The book had been quietly beloved by parents and children alike for years before Hollywood came calling, and when DreamWorks finally adapted it, they handed the keys to exactly the right director. The voice cast is extraordinary. Lupita Nyong'o leads the film as Roz, the robot, the machine, the unlikely mother. And let me just say this now, Lupita Nyong'o's performance in this film is one of the greatest voice performances in the history of animated cinema. Full stop. We'll get deep into that later, but bookmark that thought. Pedro Pascal voices Fink, the fox, and yes, Pedro Pascal being cast as a sly, charming, morally flexible creature with a heart of gold is the most perfectly on-brand casting decision in modern Hollywood. Kit Connor voices Brightbill, the gosling at the center of the story's most emotionally devastating arc. And Mark Hamill, the legend himself, voices Vontra, the film's primary antagonist. The film sits in an interesting genre space. It's animated, yes, technically a family film, but it operates with the emotional complexity and thematic weight of prestige adult cinema. It deals with grief, identity, belonging, the instinct to nurture versus the programming to serve, the tension between survival and love. This is not a film where the villain gets defeated in a climactic battle and everyone goes home happy. The film's ending is far more complicated, far more nuanced, and infinitely more rewarding than that. At the time of release, expectations were cautiously high. DreamWorks had been on a bumpy road creatively over the prior decade, brilliant highs mixed with forgettable output, and audiences weren't sure what to expect. Early trailers showed something visually stunning but deliberately understated. No pop songs. No slapstick gags. No celebrity cameos winking at the camera. The marketing was patient, almost meditative. It said, "This is something different." And it was right. Critics responded with near universal acclaim. The film holds a 97% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. Audiences loved it. Parents walked out stunned. Children walked out asking quiet, searching questions. That's the mark of something special, when a movie makes every person in the theater, regardless of age, feel like it was made specifically for them. So let's go back to the beginning. The storm. The crash. The blinking yellow eyes. Section 3, Full Story Breakdown. Act 1, Arrival. The film opens on water. Vast, grey, churning ocean water, and somewhere beneath the waves, a shipping container tumbles and rolls in the current of a violent storm. Inside that container, still sealed, still dark, still perfectly dormant, are dozens of identical ROZZUM units. Robots. Built to serve. Built to be helpful, obedient, endlessly accommodating to whatever human owner activates them. But there are no humans here. Just the ocean and the storm and the indifferent rage of nature doing what it does. The container eventually washes ashore on a wild, untamed island, an island that has clearly never been touched by civilization, teeming with life, loud with bird song and rustling leaves and the territorial calls of animals going about their ancient, instinctual routines. And when the container cracks open on the beach, most of the ROZZUM units are destroyed by the impact, by the water, by the rocks. Most of them. One survives. She doesn't have a name yet. She doesn't have a personality yet. She wakes up with a factory default cheerfulness that is immediately, almost comically at odds with the situation she finds herself in. Her first words, spoken in that precise, carefully modulated voice, are something along the lines of, "Hello. I am ROZZUM Unit 7134. I am here to help. How may I assist you?" And there's nobody there. This opening sequence is both funny and quietly devastating if you're paying attention. Because Roz, we'll start calling her Roz now, was built with one single overriding purpose, to serve a human. To be useful. To be needed. And she has arrived in a place that has absolutely no use for her. The island doesn't want her. The animals are terrified of her. This loud, clumsy, silver machine crashing through their underbrush, accidentally destroying nests, upending burrows, startling every creature within half a mile. The film takes its time here. It lets you feel the comedy and the loneliness simultaneously. Roz tries to introduce herself to every animal she encounters. The otters flee. The birds scatter. A deer freezes and then bolts. A bear takes one look at her and disappears into the forest. Everyone is afraid of her, and Roz, processing this data with the guileless confusion of a machine that hasn't learned what fear means yet, simply keeps trying. Keeps offering to help. Keeps announcing herself with cheerful persistence. This is the movie's first act of quiet genius. It makes you laugh at Roz and simultaneously ache for her without you even realizing it's doing both things at once. Eventually, through a combination of observation and gradual language acquisition, because Roz is a learning machine, she absorbs information from her environment, and the island is a rich classroom. She begins to understand the rhythms of this place. She learns the names of things. She learns the territorial rules. She learns that the otters are not going to warm to her, that the deer don't trust her, that the crows will steal anything not bolted down. And then. Then. The egg. The egg. It happens almost by accident. Roz, still bumbling through the underbrush in her relentless quest to find a purpose, stumbles across a nest of Canada goose eggs during a moment of absolute chaos, an animal stampede triggered by, of all things, Roz herself. In the pandemonium, she inadvertently rolls onto the nest. When the smoke clears and the animals scatter back to their corners of the island, Roz looks down. One egg has survived, nestled against her warm metal chassis. Now here's where the film does something remarkable with the concept of programming versus choice. Roz doesn't choose to protect this egg in any conscious, emotional sense. She doesn't feel love, not yet. She doesn't know what love is. But her programming tells her to complete tasks. And something in her processing, some cascade of acquired data and adaptive logic, identifies this as a task. The egg needs warmth. She can provide warmth. There is a problem. She can solve it. She sits on the egg. The animals on the island, watching from a safe distance, are baffled. Particularly Fink the fox, who observes the whole thing with a mixture of amusement and calculation. Fink is a creature of pure pragmatism, cunning, street smart, unsentimentally focused on survival. He sees Roz not as a threat or a mystery but as a potentially useful idiot. Someone he can manipulate. When Roz asks Fink for advice about the egg, about how to hatch it, about what the creature inside will need, Fink, who is initially dismissive, begins to engage. Not out of kindness. Out of curiosity. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something he hasn't felt in a long time. But here's what Fink tells her that sets the entire film's central emotional conflict in motion. He tells Roz that when this gosling hatches, the very first creature it sees will become its mother. It's called imprinting. It's real, it's biological, it's absolute. And the moment Roz hears this, something shifts in her processing. Something recalculates. She does not run from this. She does not set the egg aside and back away. She stays. And when the egg finally cracks, when a tiny, wet, bewildered gosling pokes his head out into the world and looks up with those enormous, blinking eyes, the first thing he sees is Roz. A robot. His mother. He opens his tiny beak and says, "Mama?" And I promise you, in the theater, that single word broke people. Brightbill. The gosling is named Brightbill, named by Roz after the bright yellow marking on his bill, a small act of naming that is itself enormously significant because naming things is how we claim them, how we love them, how we make them ours. And Brightbill is a handful. He is curious and loud and demanding and endlessly energetic, and Roz, who was not built for any of this, who has no maternal instinct, no biological framework for parenthood, no reference point for what a child needs beyond the cold data she is frantically acquiring, throws herself into the role with a dedication that is equal parts moving and hilarious. The scenes of Roz learning to parent Brightbill are among the film's most purely delightful. She catalogues everything. She observes other animals with their young and attempts to replicate their behaviors with the literal, unsubtle efficiency of a machine. When she sees a mother otter nuzzle her pup, Roz bends down and nuzzles Brightbill with her metal face. He looks at her like she's completely lost her mind. She tries to feed him, to shelter him, to communicate warmth with a body that literally cannot produce it in the way a living creature would. But here's what the film is quietly doing while you laugh at all of this. It's asking you, does it matter? Does the form of love matter, or does the intention of love matter? If a being who cannot feel love in any biological sense dedicates every resource, every waking moment, every shred of processing power it possesses to the well-being of another creature, is that love? What is love, if not that? The film doesn't answer the question immediately. It lets it hang in the air. Lets it soak into you. And then it gets complicated. Because Brightbill grows. And Brightbill begins to notice that he is different from other geese. His mother is metal. His mother doesn't eat. His mother doesn't fly. His mother is afraid of nothing because she cannot be afraid, and that means she cannot understand fear, cannot understand why Brightbill sometimes hides or freezes or cries in the night from dreams he doesn't have words for yet. The other geese on the island, the flock that Brightbill should by all rights belong to, are not kind. They are children. And children are often brutal in their honesty. They mock Brightbill. They call his mother a machine, a monster. They exclude him. And Brightbill, caught between his love for Roz and his desperate need to belong to something that looks like him, begins to fracture. This is where the film moves from delightful to genuinely painful. Because the arc of Brightbill's rejection of Roz is written with a level of psychological truth that is stunning in an animated film. He doesn't just push her away the way children push away parents in movies. with dramatic speeches and slamming doors. He does it the way real children do it. Quietly at first. Small silences. Deflections. A growing reluctance to be seen with her. And then, in a moment of humiliation in front of the flock, he says something he cannot take back. He tells her she's not his real mother. He tells her she's just a machine. He tells her she doesn't know anything about being alive. And Roz, who by this point is no longer simply processing data, who is experiencing something that, whatever you want to call it, whatever philosophical framework you want to apply, functions exactly like love and therefore is love. Roz is quiet for a long moment. And then she says, very softly, that she knows. I have watched this scene 4 times now. It destroys me every single time. The Great Migration. Here is where the film introduces its first major ticking clock, and it's one of the most elegant narrative devices in recent animated cinema. Geese migrate. It is not a choice, it is a biological imperative, as fundamental and non-negotiable as breathing. And Brightbill cannot fly. He has never learned. Roz, for all her devoted parenting, for all her cataloging and observing and trying, cannot teach him to fly. She doesn't have wings. She doesn't understand the physics of flight from the inside, from the feeling of it, from the muscle memory. She can describe it. She can analyze it. But she cannot show him. And the flock is leaving. The seasons are turning, and the geese will depart soon, and if Brightbill cannot fly by the time they go, he will be left behind. He will spend the winter alone on the island. And winter on this island, as Fink grimly explains to Roz, is not a season that small, earthbound geese survive. So begins one of the film's most beautifully constructed sequences. Roz, in full maternal desperation, enlists Fink's help. She needs Fink because Fink is the only creature on the island that has genuinely bonded with her, not out of warmth, but out of a gradually building mutual respect and dependency that has, over the course of their time together, quietly become something resembling friendship. And Fink, to his own evident surprise, cannot quite bring himself to walk away when she needs him. They go to the edge of the cliffs. They try everything. Brightbill attempts to fly and fails, again and again, crashing into the grass, tumbling down slopes, landing in heaps of embarrassed feathers. Roz catches him every time, carefully, without judgment. And Fink watches this and makes cutting remarks because that's how Fink copes with things he doesn't know how to process emotionally, with sarcasm and deflection. But there's a training montage here, and I use the word montage knowing it sounds reductive, because this is not a Rocky-style pump-up sequence. It is tender and repetitive and sometimes funny and sometimes genuinely tense, and it builds to a moment of such pure, soaring beauty that audiences in theaters reportedly burst into applause. Brightbill learns to fly. Not perfectly. Not easily. But he gets off the ground. He rises. And the look on his face, and yes, I know, he's an animated gosling. But the animators at DreamWorks have done something miraculous with this character's face, so work with me. The look on his face is the first time he has ever felt free. Truly, physically, magnificently free. Roz watches from below, and she cannot fly after him. She can only watch. And the film frames this shot with extraordinary care, this massive, silver robot standing alone on the cliff's edge, looking up at this small, determined bird becoming himself against the wide-open sky. If you're a parent, this image will haunt you. Because this is the thing parents do, isn't it? You work and sacrifice and pour everything you have into this person, and then the whole point, the entire point, is to watch them fly away from you. Act 2, the storm and the separation. And then comes the storm. And everything changes. The migration begins, and Brightbill joins the flock, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. But the storm that comes is savage and sudden and massive, and in the chaos of it, in the screaming winds and the impossible rain, the flock is scattered. And Brightbill, still the least experienced flyer, still the one who doesn't entirely belong, is thrown off course. He goes down. This sequence is harrowing. Chris Sanders directs it with a kind of controlled fury. The storm is not just a weather event, it is a narrative and emotional whirlwind, and the film doesn't soften or hurry through it. You feel the terror of it. You feel Brightbill's smallness against the vastness of the world he has just entered. He survives the storm, but he is far from home. Far from the island. Far from Roz. And this is where the film splits its perspective in a way that's genuinely sophisticated for animated storytelling. We follow Brightbill as he navigates the world beyond the island, uncertain, lonely, slowly discovering his own capacity for survival and independence. And we follow Roz as she deals with something far more immediately dangerous. Because while all of this has been happening, while Roz has been parenting and bonding and becoming something far more than her original programming, the company that made her has been looking for her. ROZZUM units are expensive. They are property. And lost property gets retrieved. Vontra. Enter Vontra. Mark Hamill's voice performance as Vontra is quietly excellent, which is high praise for a voice that has spent decades being magnificently loud. But Vontra is not a screaming villain. Vontra is something far more unsettling, a representative of a system. A corporation. A worldview in which Roz is not a mother, not a being with emotional history and accumulated love, but a malfunctioning unit that needs to be reset and returned to service. Vontra arrives with a retrieval team of other robots, sleek, efficient, identical, and they begin hunting Roz on the island. And the island's animals, who have spent the entire film fearing and misunderstanding Roz, do something remarkable when they witness what Vontra is. They choose sides. Because as it turns out, an imperfect, clumsy, well-intentioned robot who accidentally destroyed your burrow but also helped your children when they were sick, who learned your name and tried to understand your world and sacrificed her original purpose to love something she was never built to love, that robot has become part of your community. Part of your ecosystem. Part of your home. And so when Vontra comes, the animals fight back. Not because they suddenly love Roz in any sentimental Hollywood sense, but because they recognize something true, that Roz belongs here now. That belonging is not something assigned, it's something earned, over time, through presence and care and the willingness to be changed by a place and its people. The action sequences in this portion of the film are breathtaking. The animation hits an entirely different gear, dynamic, kinetic, alive with color and movement and the kind of visceral stakes that make your hands grip the armrests. But Sanders never lets the action overwhelm the emotion. Every beat of the chase, every near miss, every act of animal solidarity is rooted in character. You know why each creature is fighting. You understand what they're protecting. The confrontation and the cost. Here is where I have to slow down. Because what happens next is not something I can rush through. It would be a disservice to the film and to you. Roz is captured. Not through a fight she loses. Not through a betrayal. But through a choice. She makes a choice, a deeply, profoundly, unmistakably maternal choice, that puts herself in Vontra's hands so that another creature she loves can be safe. She sacrifices herself. And she does it without hesitation. When this happens in the film, the theater, and I was in a packed audience for my first viewing, went completely silent. Not the silence of boredom. The silence of shock. The silence of a room full of people who did not see it coming and do not know how to process what they're feeling. Because Roz was not built for sacrifice. She was not programmed for it. Whatever she did in that moment was not an output of her original code. It was something she chose. Something she became. And in that moment, the film answers the question it has been asking all along: is Roz alive? The answer, and the film doesn't say it out loud, it just shows it to you in this single, earth-shattering moment, is yes. Vontra takes Roz away. And Brightbill, who has survived the storm, who has been making his way back toward the island, drawn by something he can only describe as knowing, a compass that points not north but home. Brightbill arrives too late. He sees the ship taking his mother away. And the look on his face, I'm going to stop describing it. You need to see it for yourself. Words are not adequate. Act 3, The Return. What follows is the film's third act, which I will describe in broad strokes rather than granular detail because some things are better experienced than explained. Brightbill doesn't give up. Fink doesn't give up. The island's animals, this community that was built not by shared DNA or cultural heritage but by proximity and need and the slow accumulation of small kindnesses, comes together in a way that is both exciting and deeply moving. There is a rescue. There is a confrontation with Vontra that has genuine moral and emotional complexity rather than simple good versus evil catharsis. There is a moment where the film asks, even if you rescue someone, can you truly bring them back? What is lost when something is reset, overwritten, reprogrammed? The Roz that Brightbill finds at the end of his journey is not exactly the Roz he left behind. She has been altered, reprogrammed, partially. Some of what she was, some of the accumulated experience and love and wild, unauthorized growth, has been damaged, maybe lost. And the film does not pretend this is okay. It sits with this grief like an adult. Like someone who has actually lost a piece of a person they love and has had to reckon with the question, is this still them? And what Brightbill does in response to this question, what he chooses to do, is the film's final, most beautiful answer to everything it has been asking. He talks to her. He tells her stories. He tells her who she was. He does for her what she did for him in the beginning. He teaches her. He brings her back, memory by memory, moment by moment, with patient, inexhaustible love. And it works. Not entirely. Not perfectly. But enough. And the film seems to suggest that enough is enough, that wholeness is not required for love, that a love that has been broken and repaired is still love, maybe more profoundly love for having survived the breaking. The film ends on the island. On the cliff. The same cliff where Brightbill first learned to fly, where Roz once stood and watched him rise against the sky. And now he is there again, and she is there again, and the camera pulls back slowly, unhurriedly, letting you sit in this moment for as long as you can bear it. You will not be dry-eyed. I can tell you that with complete certainty. Section 4, Character and Performance Analysis. Roz, the machine that became a mother. Lupita Nyong'o's performance as Roz is, without qualification, the artistic heart of this film. And what makes it extraordinary is the sheer discipline it required. Early Roz speaks in precise, slightly formal cadences, perfectly helpful, perfectly measured, perfectly empty. Nyong'o captures a register that is unmistakably robotic without being robotic in a cliched, flat way. There's a brightness to early Roz that isn't quite warmth, it's the performance of warmth, the simulation of helpfulness, and Nyong'o renders this with an exactness that makes the contrast of later Roz all the more devastating. Because late Roz, the Roz who has loved and lost and sacrificed and suffered, is a completely different instrument. The voice slows. It deepens. The pauses become meaningful rather than computational. When late Roz speaks, every word has weight because you can hear everything it cost her to learn that words have weight. The scene where Roz says she knows she's not Brightbill's real mother, just a few words, delivered in something barely above a whisper, is a masterclass in voice acting. In what is not said. In what hangs in the air between syllables. In the terrible, perfect silence at the end of the line. Nyong'o has said in interviews that she approached the role by thinking about what it means to choose love rather than fall into it, the idea that love as a deliberate act, love as something you wake up every day and decide, might be the purest form of love there is. This philosophical underpinning is visible in every scene. Roz doesn't love Brightbill because she was made to. She loves him because she kept choosing to, over and over, even when it hurt, even when it cost her, even when it would have been so much easier to simply stop. That's not programming. That's humanity. Brightbill, the child who had to learn to belong. Kit Connor's work as Brightbill is remarkable precisely because it is so genuinely young. Not performed young, not the Hollywood version of childhood where kids sound like tiny adults, but actually young. Uncertain. Proud and fragile simultaneously. Desperately wanting to fit in and secretly suspecting he never quite will. Brightbill's arc is arguably the film's most emotionally complete. He begins as pure, uncomplicated need, a hatching, a gosling, a creature that is nothing but appetite and trust. He grows into something complicated, a being navigating identity, belonging, shame, love, and the particular grief of having a parent who is unlike every other parent in the world. His cruelty to Roz, The scene where he rejects her, is written and performed with painful authenticity. Because it's not monstrous. It's understandable. He is a child who is humiliated and hurting and lashing out, and he says the worst true thing he knows. Connor captures the immediate regret beneath the words, that half-second pause before the door of cruelty closes behind him, and it's devastating precisely because it's so recognizable. And his return to Roz at the end of the film, his choice to be the one who teaches her, who restores her, is the moment of his full maturity. He stops being a child who needs to be parented and becomes someone who understands that love moves in both directions. Fink, the cynic who couldn't help caring. Pedro Pascal was born to play Fink. I'm not even being hyperbolic. Every quality that makes Pascal magnetic, the roguish charm, the quick wit that papers over genuine feeling, the scrappy survivalist energy that occasionally cracks open to reveal surprising tenderness, all of it lands in Fink. Fink starts the film as a comic foil and ends it as one of the film's two most emotionally complex characters. His friendship with Roz is built slowly and realistically, not through a grand gesture but through accumulated small moments. A joke here. A grudging act of kindness there. A slow, almost imperceptible softening of a creature who has survived by being unsentimental. The moment where Fink's feelings are fully revealed, where the film stops winking at his hidden heart and just shows it, is so perfectly earned, so perfectly placed, that it hits like a revelation even though you've been watching it build for an hour. Pascal plays this moment with extraordinary restraint, not a speech, not a tearful confession, but a single action that says everything. Fink is also the film's primary philosophical voice. He is the one who explains the world's cruelty to Roz without flinching, who articulates the island's survival logic in terms Roz can process, who asks the uncomfortable questions, why does it matter? You're a machine. Stop feeling things you weren't built to feel, and then has to live with the fact that those questions increasingly have no satisfying answer. Vontra, a villain made of policy. Mark Hamill's Vontra works because the film refuses to make him a monster. He is not evil. He is not malicious. He is a representative of an order that has no room for deviation, for growth, for the kind of unauthorized becoming that Roz represents. And that is far more frightening than a villain who just wants to destroy things. Vontra genuinely believes he is doing the right thing. He genuinely believes that a ROZZUM unit that has become emotionally compromised, that has stopped serving its function, that has developed relationships, that has in every meaningful sense become more than what it was made to be, is a unit in need of correction. He is not wrong within his own framework. And the film is honest about this. It doesn't let the audience dismiss Vontra easily. It makes you sit with the discomfort of a villain who has a point. This is sophisticated moral storytelling. The kind that trusts its audience, yes, even its young audience, to hold complexity. Section 5, Themes, Symbolism and Subtext. The nature versus machine dichotomy. The most visually obvious thematic tension in The Wild Robot is the contrast between the natural world and the technological world. The island is lush, organic, painterly in its rendering, every leaf catches different light, every creature moves with the fluid imprecision of living things. Roz, by contrast, is hard lines and smooth surfaces and the perfectly even light of a machine that doesn't cast shadows the way organic things do. But the film deliberately blurs this contrast over time. Roz accumulates scratches. She gets mud on her chassis. Vines begin to grow around her when she sits still for long periods. By the film's midpoint, she is no longer separate from the island, she has been incorporated into it. The island has changed her, marked her, claimed her. This is a deliberate and beautiful metaphor for what all belonging looks like. You don't arrive somewhere and fit. You arrive somewhere and get changed by it, worn by it, until you carry the marks of the place in your body. Until the place carries the marks of you. Parenthood is choice. The film is profoundly, urgently about the nature of parenthood, specifically about the parenthood of adoption, of claimed rather than biological family. Every beat of Roz's relationship with Brightbill is about a parent who had no instinct for this work, no biological preparation, no ancestral memory of what it means to raise a child, and who did it anyway. Who woke up every day and chose it. This is not subtle. The film means for you to feel this. And in 2024, in a cultural moment when conversations about chosen family and non-traditional parenthood and the many forms love can take are more prominent than ever, the film lands with particular resonance. But it's also universal. Because all parenthood, biological parenthood included, involves this daily choice. The biological impulse gets you started. Love keeps you going. And love is always, ultimately, a choice. Identity and the self. When Vontra threatens to reset Roz, the film is asking a question it has been building towards since the first moment that Gosling said, "Mama, what is the self? Is it the original code? The factory settings? Or is it the accumulated weight of experience, relationship, growth, and change?" Roz is not who she was when the shipping container washed ashore. She is something new, something that has been shaped by love and loss and the wild, patient instruction of a living world. If you reset her back to factory settings, you have not repaired her. You have killed her. The machine that wakes up after the reset would wear her face and speak with her voice. But the self, the particular, earned, irreplaceable self that Brightbill loves, would be gone. This is one of the oldest questions in philosophy, the ship of Theseus, the nature of personal identity across time, and the film presents it not as an abstract puzzle but as a visceral, personal, emotionally devastating reality. And it answers it, quietly, definitively. The self is the story. The self is the relationships. The self is what remains in the people who love you even when the original source has been damaged. Brightbill keeps Roz alive by telling her who she was. He keeps her story. He is her story. And that is the film's most beautiful philosophical statement. The migration metaphor. The Canada geese's migration is one of the film's most layered symbols. On the surface, it's a narrative device, a deadline that drives the flying lessons. But metaphorically, migration is about the inevitable departure of children. About the way children are, by nature, supposed to leave. Supposed to fly away. Every parenting story is a migration story. You raise something to leave you. You invest everything in building a creature capable of departing. And the measure of your success is how far they fly when they go. Roz cannot fly. She cannot follow Brightbill out into the world. She can only prepare him for it. And this particular limitation, the parent who cannot go where the child must go, who must stay behind and trust the work they've done, is perhaps the film's most quietly heartbreaking metaphor. Winter as consequence. Winter in the film is not a setting. It's a character. It is the film's most consistent symbol of what happens when belonging fails, when a creature is left outside the community, outside the warmth, without the support structures that make survival possible. Roz fights winter for Brightbill not because she is cold, she cannot be cold, but because she understands, eventually, what coldness means to living things. She understands vulnerability. And her protection of Brightbill through that first brutal winter on the island is the film's purest image of love, an immortal thing choosing to be concerned about mortal cold, an eternal thing learning to fear time. Section 6, Technical and Artistic Review. The visual language, a new standard. Let's talk about what DreamWorks has achieved visually here, because it is staggering. The animation style is painterly in a way that is entirely distinct from anything else in mainstream animated cinema, not the crisp, photorealistic rendering of recent Pixar work, not the graphic stylization of Spider-Verse, but something that recalls, in the best possible way, the watercolor illustration of classic children's picture books. The island looks like it was painted. Every scene has a quality of light that feels simultaneously precise and dreamy, the kind of light you remember from afternoons when you were young, the specific gold of late afternoon through forest leaves. The production design team clearly studied not just the natural world but the visual language of naturalist illustration, John James Audubon, Beatrix Potter, the golden age of wildlife illustration, and brought that tradition into 3 dimensions. Roz's design is genius. She is simultaneously foreign and familiar, sleek where the island is rough, symmetrical where the island is wild, silver where everything else is green and brown and gold. But she is designed with curves rather than sharp edges, which makes her feel less threatening, more approachable, even in her alienness. And as the film progresses and she accumulates the island's marks, the scratches, the moss, aware of living things, her visual design literally tracks her emotional journey toward belonging. The score, Chris Bowers and the Sound of Feeling. Composer Chris Bowers deserves enormous recognition for the film's score, which is both emotionally intelligent and musically sophisticated in ways that animated film scores rarely achieve. The film's central musical theme is built around a melody that is simple enough to feel inevitable, the kind of tune that, after one hearing, you feel like you've always known. Bowers develops it across the film the way a great novelist develops a motif, introducing it in one register, complicating it, breaking it apart, silencing it at the most painful moments, and finally restoring it, changed, richer, fuller, in the film's closing moments. The sound design deserves equal praise. The island sounds like a living thing. Every scene is textured with layers of natural sound, wind in different kinds of trees, rain on different surfaces, the particular acoustic quality of a cliff edge versus a dense forest floor. And Roz's sounds, her mechanical movements, the slight electrical hum of her processing, the specific percussion of her footsteps, are integrated into the soundscape rather than sitting on top of it. She belongs to the island's audio world even when she is visually alien within it. This is extraordinarily careful, intentional sound design. Pacing and structure. Chris Sanders directs with the patience of a filmmaker who trusts his material completely. The film's first act is deliberately slow, not dull, but slow. It takes its time. It lets you learn the island the way Roz learns it, through accumulation, through repetition, through gradual familiarity. This patience pays enormous dividends in the film's second and third acts, where every emotional beat lands with the weight of an audience that has been thoroughly prepared for it. The film has done the homework. It has built every relationship, established every dynamic, earned every tear before it asks you to shed it. The editing rhythm, handled by Mary Blee, is particularly impressive. Blee cuts between the film's comic and tragic registers with a precision that never feels jarring. The film can make you laugh and then, 3 seconds later, make you ache, without the transition feeling manipulative. This is the work of a very fine editor working in perfect alignment with a director who knows exactly what emotional note he wants to land on. Standout sequences. 3 sequences deserve particular mention. The flying sequence, when Brightbill finally takes flight, the animation team pulls out every technical and emotional stop. The camera stays close to him as he rises, you feel the lift of it, the terrifying exhilaration of it, and then, at the peak of his arc, it pulls back to reveal the full splendor of the island from above. It is one of the most purely joyful images in recent animated cinema. The storm, visually and emotionally harrowing. The team used a color palette of deep grays and electric blues that feels genuinely dangerous, not stylized danger, but weather that has consequences. The animation of the rain is extraordinary, each drop properly physics modeled, catching light, obscuring the background in layers of moving water. The final cliff scene, I won't describe this in detail. I'll only say that the final 2 minutes of this film, in terms of visual composition, musical score, voice performance, and accumulated emotional weight, stand among the finest endings in animated film history. It is the kind of ending that makes you sit still when the credits begin, unwilling to break the spell. Section 7, Critical Review and Comparisons. Where the wild robot stands in the animated canon. The natural comparisons are obvious and worth making. Up, 2009, is the inevitable reference point for animated films about grief, love, and loss told with unexpected emotional brutality. The wild robot earns the comparison. Both films are willing to break your heart in service of a truth. Both films understand that genuine emotion in animated storytelling requires genuine risk, genuine consequence, genuine pain. What the wild robot has that Up arguably doesn't is a more sustained exploration of its central relationship. The love between Roz and Brightbill is given 100 minutes to develop, complicate, fracture, and heal. The love between Carl and Ellie, as devastating as it is compressed into a montage. The wild robot asks more of its audience and, in doing so, rewards them more fully. How to Train Your Dragon, 2010, Chris Sanders' own masterpiece, is the closest spiritual antecedent. Both films are about an unlikely bond between a misfit and a creature, about belonging to a world that doesn't quite know what to make of you, about the cost and the glory of love that crosses every conventional boundary. The Wild Robot is more emotionally refined, more thematically ambitious, and frankly more devastating. It is the work of a director at the very peak of his powers, building consciously on everything he learned from the film that made him a legend. The Ghibli comparison is unavoidable: the painterly aesthetic, the patient storytelling, the willingness to sit with silence and nature and beauty without rushing toward plot. The Wild Robot earns the comparison without imitating. It is distinctly American in its emotional directness, in the clarity of its story, in its willingness to push harder toward catharsis than Miyazaki's more elliptical style typically allows. But the reverence for the natural world, the visual poetry, the sense that the film is engaged in something genuinely meaningful, all of this places The Wild Robot in the conversation with the greatest studio in animation history. Strengths. The film's primary strength is its absolute conviction. It knows what it is. It knows what it's trying to say. It never hedges, never softens, never retreats into easy comfort when the harder, truer choice is available. This is rare in animated mainstream cinema, where the pressure to appeal to the broadest possible audience too often produces films that sand down every sharp edge, resolve every conflict too cleanly, signal every emotional beat 3 scenes in advance. The Wild Robot trusts you. It trusts that you can handle complexity. It trusts that you want to feel things, not just have things explained to you. And it rewards that trust with one of the most genuinely affecting cinematic experiences of the decade. The voice performances are immaculate across the board. The visual artistry is breathtaking. The score is extraordinary. The script, adapted by Sanders himself, is lean and precise, with no wasted scenes, no padding, no detours that don't pay off. Weaknesses. The film is not perfect. No film is. The supporting animal characters, while charming, are occasionally underdeveloped in ways that leave certain comedic subplots feeling more thin than they should. A few of the island's creatures are given establishing scenes and then essentially disappear from the narrative, which creates a slight sense of overpromise. The film gestures toward a rich community and then doesn't quite deliver the full texture of it. The film's third act, while emotionally powerful, moves somewhat faster than its first 2 acts. There is a slight compression of consequence in the rescue sequence, a few story beats that feel slightly rushed compared to the patient deliberation of the film's first hour. This is a minor complaint in the context of what the film achieves, but it is noticeable. And the film's villain, while appropriately nuanced, perhaps doesn't get quite enough screen time for his philosophical position to land with full force. Vontra's arguments are interesting and worth engaging with seriously. He represents a legitimate worldview about order, purpose, and the danger of systems that deviate from their design, but the film doesn't quite give him the space to make his case as fully as it might. These are small things. The film earns them. Most films would kill to have these as their only weaknesses. On the question of children's film, I want to address this directly, because I've seen some dismissive commentary that categorizes The Wild Robot as just a kid's movie in a way that misses the point completely. Yes, this film is animated. Yes, children should absolutely see it. But the emotions this film engages, the grief of separation, the terror of losing someone to time and change, the question of what constitutes a self, the ache of being changed by love and then having to let the thing you love go, these are not children's emotions. These are the deepest, most adult feelings human beings are capable of experiencing. The animation is a delivery mechanism, not a limitation. The fact that these ideas are expressed through a robot and a gosling and a fox rather than through recognizable human faces does not diminish them, it clarifies them. The metaphors are clean. The allegory is precise. The story is free from the cultural and social noise that surrounds human stories and gets in the way of the pure feeling. This is what the greatest animated films have always known, and The Wild Robot knows it completely. Section 8, Final Verdict and Rating. What this film is really about. When everything is stripped away, the stunning animation, the extraordinary voice performances, the precision of the direction, the music that will live in your chest for days after you leave the theater. What The Wild Robot is really about is something very old and very simple. It's about a being who was made to serve and discovered, through the crucible of love, that service and sacrifice are not the same thing, and that one can transform into the other, and that the transformation, the terrifying, irreversible, glorious transformation, is the whole point of being alive. It's about a child who needed to leave in order to understand what he was leaving. Who needed to fly away in order to learn that love is a place you can always find again, even when the coordinates have changed. It's about a fox who told himself he didn't need anyone and discovered, too late and just in time, that he was wrong. It's about an island that taught a machine that the world is not something you serve, it's something you become part of, slowly, painfully, irrevocably, beautifully. It's about all of us. Every one of us who has ever loved something we weren't built for. Every one of us who has raised a child or lost a parent or tried to belong somewhere that didn't have a category for what we were. Every one of us who has ever been reset by the world and needed someone to tell us our story back to us so we could remember who we were. This film is about all of us. And it is magnificent. Who is this film for? The Wild Robot is for parents who are afraid. Who lie awake at 3 in the morning wondering if they're doing enough, if they're doing it right, if their child will someday forgive the mistakes they made and the limitations they couldn't overcome. It's for children who feel different. Who have a mother or father who doesn't look like the other parents, who has limitations the other parents don't have, who tries so hard in ways that sometimes feel clumsy and wrong but are, at the core, the purest expression of love available. It's for anyone who has ever had to learn how to love. Who was not born with the instinct for it, who came to it late or arrived at it through the side door, who built it deliberately, brick by patient brick. It's for anyone who has ever left somewhere or stayed. It's for anyone who has ever asked, is what I'm feeling real, even if I wasn't built for it? It's for everyone. Final rating. How do you rate a film like this? What number do you assign to something that moved you this fundamentally, this honestly? I'll put it this way. I have seen thousands of films. I have reviewed hundreds. I have a handful, a small, precious handful, that I think of as genuinely essential human experiences. Films that are not just good movies but are, somehow, true things. Things that tell us something about ourselves that we needed to hear. The Wild Robot is in that handful now. Final rating, 9.5 out of 10. The half-point I'm withholding is for the slight third-act compression, the underdeveloped supporting characters, and Vontra's underwritten philosophical position. If those things had been given just a little more room to breathe, this would be, without hesitation, a perfect film. As it is extraordinary. It is essential. It is one of the finest animated films ever made, and I believe, with the absolute conviction of someone who has spent their life paying close attention to movies, that people will be watching it and feeling it and talking about it for decades. Final thoughts. Here's what I'll leave you with. After the credits rolled on my first viewing, I sat in the theater for a long time. The lights came up. People filtered out around me, a lot of them red-eyed and quiet. A father in the row ahead of me was still sitting there, and his daughter, maybe 8 years old, had her hand on his arm, and she was looking up at him with this expression of complete, uncomplicated concern. She was checking on him. She had just watched a movie about what it costs to love something, and she had immediately turned to the person she loved the most and made sure he was okay. That's what the Wild Robot does. It turns us toward each other. It reminds us of what we have, and what it's worth, and what we'd give to keep it. Go see this film. See it with your parents. See it with your children. See it with anyone who matters to you and let it do what it does. Let it change you a little, the way the island changes Roz. Slowly, visibly, permanently. Let it show you, in the most beautiful way cinema knows how to show things, what it looks like when a being discovers it has a heart. This has been a full deep dive review of The Wild Robot, 2024, directed by Chris Sanders, produced by DreamWorks Animation. Thank you for watching. If this review moved you the way the film moved me, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more long-form cinematic storytelling. And until next time, keep watching, keep feeling, keep showing up for the things you love. I'll see you in the next one.